You look at your calendar, 30th of November. Your project is due in 2 days, and you have done less than half of what you had to do by now. Once again, you did not manage your time correctly, and you chose the newest season of Breaking Bad over work. You begin to feel the stress mounting, and you're sure that the end result that you will deliver will be well below your expectations and potential. Today, we are in Warsaw, Poland, with Dr Marek Wypych. He is a researcher in Nencki Institute of Experimental Biology at the Laboratory of Brain Imaging here in Warsaw, where he studies the phenomena of procrastination, emotion regulation, and self-control. In today's episode, he tells us all about procrastination, its mechanisms, neural correlates, determinants, and more. He shares strategies on how to overcome procrastination and reassures us that we may all procrastinate sometimes. So when should we start to worry? Listen to our conversation. I hope you will learn a lot, as I sure did. Tune in with Healthy Habits Podcast. Marek, can you tell me, are you a procrastinator yourself?
I used to be, but I think now I'm kind of average person. I'm not like super organized or super effective or productive, but also not a procrastinator. So I would say that I'm like in the middle range.
Okay, and do you think that working on this topic helped you with overcoming some of the difficulties that you had before?
No, in fact, I did it earlier. It was thanks to one book. I like looked into my self deeply, and it helped me.
Okay, what book was that?
It was a book by Fiore, and the title is "The Now Habit: How to Overcome Procrastination and Enjoy Guilt-Free Play."
Mm-hmm. And why did you choose to read this book?
Because I had a problem with procrastination.
Okay, so you had a problem, and
yeah, I had it, and I recommend this book. It is really good book. A Polish title is really horrible, but English title is like reflecting the spirit of this book. And in fact, it is based on cognitive behavioral therapy. So this kind of you can say manual for kind of self-therapy of procrastination. Mm-hmm. So if you really try this book and exercises, it is a big chance that you will decrease your procrastination.
But still, you have to have the capacity to be systematical and to engage in pursuing the strategies that are written about in this book, right? So if you don't have that, then
yes, this is the problem. But it is not. I don't know what to say now, because it is a problem in procrastination, in addictions, also in therapy, that you have to engage. So probably you need to be like kind of motivated because you suffer too much of this. So I was reading this book. It was really interesting for me, and it was just so it helped me.
And how did procrastination become your research topic?
I kind of am scientist, so I search for stuff that interests me also from scientific perspective, and it occurred that in procrastination there was not so much research. So I thought it would be nice to add something to what we know about procrastination from scientific perspective.
Mm-hmm, because you're also working on other topics, right? In your work, in your everyday.
I mean, my topic, that I'm leading is mostly procrastination, but I'm collaborating with different scientists on different topics because of kind of analytical skills that I have and methods on analysis of functional resonance, functional magnetic
imaging. Yeah, no worries.
fMRI data.
Yeah, fMRI. Functional magnetic resonance imaging.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that's it. Okay, and do you have a favorite topic that is it procrastination, your favorite topic of research? Is it still as interesting to you as it was?
Yes, procrastination, but also addictions. I'm not researching addictions, but I think I could with very much interest. So I think and in self-regulation in general, or difficulties in self-regulation. So I think I'm kind of interested in this internal conflict that we want to do something and we don't do, or we don't want to do something and we do it. So this is, I think that any topic in this area would interest me.
Okay. And when you were a procrastinator, what was it, or what is it still, that is most difficult for you? So what kind of tasks do you find most difficult to engage in?
Hard to say. I mean, my master's thesis was, I would say, the peak of my procrastination. It took me very long.
And now when you're writing scientific articles, is it still something that goes hard for you, or?
No, not really. As I said, now I'm kind of, I would say, average on this. So I have better days and worse days, like everybody. When I'm kind of down, it is also always like harder to engage in anything, but it is like very typical for people, I would say.
Okay. So do you think you're working on procrastination for some years now? Do you think that nowadays people seem to have more time with procrastination than a couple of, maybe a decade ago, or maybe 30 years ago, before the appearance of new technologies, for example?
That's a good question. I don't know the exact data. So procrastination research is started like in 90s, and it seems that it is kind of stable, that around 15-20% of people have problem with procrastination, regardless of where they live, so regardless of culture, country. But there was some kind of...
How much is it? 15%?
Around 15-20%.
Okay, and how do they measure that?
That's a good question. They measure it in different ways, but in general, do you think that procrastination is your problem? And around 15-20% of people says yes. So for now, we don't have like a diagnosis for procrastination. There is research ongoing on this. So if we can diagnose that someone really has a problem with procrastination or not, but for now, procrastination is not defined as a disorder in I don't know, ECD or DSM classifications. Maybe it will change, maybe not. But in general, like it looks like around this 15% of people suffers because of procrastination.
Okay, and what are those classifications? ECD and DSM?
ICD, I think 10 and 11. It's changing now from 10 to 11 in Europe. It's European classification for I don't know the abbreviation, in fact. And DSM-5 is American classification of mental diseases.
So this is some kind of database of different diseases, and it is being actualized based on new research. So, for example,
it is being actualized, yes, and it is not a database. It's like a manual how to diagnose. If you have a patient, you can diagnose that he or she has, for example, like panic attacks, and then if you diagnose, then it is like a basis for treatment.
Okay, so there is the 15% that have problems with procrastination, regardless of culture or gender. Is it gender related?
Men has higher scores in procrastination questionnaires, a little. In general, I think women are better organized.
Okay. And how do you think it relates to the new technologies? Because
yes. So there was a report in States, I think, a few years ago, because I don't remember from which university it was, but they do like every 10 years kind of research on their students, and it seems that students started to procrastinate more from, I don't know, it was, I don't remember the details and when it was reported, but it was like, I think it was like every 10 years, and they they saw that students, because it's like, tend to procrastinate more, probably because of new technologies, because in your pocket you have like whole world that can like be a tool to procrastinate. But I wouldn't say that it is like that the problem grew, because I believe, but we'll see in future, that it is kind of stable, that is around 15% of people have this problem. But of course, new technologies like can help in procrastination.
So why do you think in the research it grew, the amount of procrastination? Is it because we have more students, or is it because, I don't know?
I think that students are like a kind of different species of humans, and they can the consequences of what they do are not so bad, so they can like allow themselves to spend more time in internet or whatever. This is one thing, and another thing. No, maybe just this I would say, and I would expect that when they finished their studies and they go to work, then it would be again this 15%, and yeah.
Okay. And do you think, because, well, yeah, new technologies, they can be destructive, but we also have a lot of different apps and calendars and programs that are there to help us organize our daily lives. So do you think it can also be helpful?
For sure. Without calendar, I would like get lost. I have many meetings in my job, and not only me, and I think it is nowadays, where work is like more complex, these tools are very, very useful.
All right, so we're talking about procrastination for a while now, but we still haven't really defined it. So can you give your scientific perspective on the phenomenon of procrastination? What is it? Is it a homogeneous or a complex, more complex phenomenon in your view?
So I would start with the definition. So procrastination is a behavior that everybody can have, and most of people have from time to time. So it is like delaying realization of different tasks, despite risks that this delay will lead to negative consequences. And these negative consequences are very important, because if there are no negative consequences, then there is no problem. So this is one thing, that it is like behavior. And another thing is like tendency to procrastination, and this is this 15% of people that we were talking already have tendency to procrastinate on most of the important tasks, and this affects their lives, their life quality, their mood, their self-esteem, often their health if they procrastinate going to a doctor. So it really can have many negative consequences, but most usual negative consequences, I would say, are emotional. So this is like frustration, guilt, low self-esteem, stress.
In what kind of tasks do we procrastinate the most? Is it work related or study related? Do we also have personal things that we procrastinate on?
Everything. I think that problem is when you procrastinate important tasks, and they can be like private or work related, study related. And people tend to procrastinate in all areas of their lives. And probably if someone, there is some research that show that if you have tendency to procrastinate, you will most probably procrastinate in your private life, in your job, and so on. But there can be some differences on like life domains that you can have tendency to procrastinate more job-related stuff or private stuff. So yeah, there are some differences, but in general, it's like general.
And how does it affect our emotions? Because you said that it impacts our emotion. It can have an impact on our health. So how does it happen?
So in general, procrastination is strongly related to emotion and emotion regulation. So now I will have like a longer maybe thought. So procrastination is related to emotions, and it's believed now that procrastination is a way for a short-term mood regulation. So if you are stressed with your exam, then you can like switch TV on or play some computer game or something, and then your stress or your fear before this related to this exam gets lower. So it is in fact avoidant behavior most often, so that you avoid discomfort related to certain task, and if the task is important, the discomfort can be usually higher. But then the deadline comes or the exam comes, and you are stressed, frustrated, you feel guilt. If you don't pass the exam, it can affect your self-esteem. So this is kind of I would say a loop, because also
like a vicious circle.
Yes, and also it was shown that in general, when people feel more down and have tendency to procrastination, their tendency will like be stronger. So if we are stressed, then we will procrastinate more. If we are guilty, we will procrastinate more, and so on.
And so why do you think that we can't see that? Because let's say that I'm a person who procrastinates. I know that I procrastinate. So I know that I should be studying, or I know that I should be working on a project, but instead I'm watching my favorite series for a week straight. And so why do I still choose to engage in that? Do you have an answer? Yeah, you say mood regulation strategy, but why is it stronger than the fact that? So how to balance it out?
We don't really understand this very deeply, but there is few mechanisms that adds to this behavior, let's say, and one of them is learning. So when you are, let's say, stressed, you feel bad because of exam or project or something, and then you switch on your favorite series, you feel better, and for your brain it's a reward. So you get a reward for not doing stuff that you have should done, and brain learns that, okay, next time if the exam is getting closer, it is good to switch the TV on or whatever.
Okay, so it's somehow related to the phenomenon of the instant gratification. Would you say so?
Yes.
And
it reinforces this behavior. This is one of mechanisms probably.
And is there something like a profile of a procrastinator? So do we have some psychological traits, or maybe is it genetic, or maybe it's behavioral, something we learn, maybe it's because of the environment that we are in? How do we become a procrastinator? Is there are there some other maybe traits that we have which are related to this trait of procrastinating? Or
yes, we don't know everything yet, but procrastination is strongly related with impulsivity, and impulsivity probably has genetical background, but we don't know exact genes or something. But studies on twins show that both procrastination and impulsivity have like common genetical background. So if we happen to born with a higher tendency to impulsivity, the risk that we will procrastinate is higher.
Okay, are there any other psychological traits that I might have which may mean that I might be a procrastinator?
So we can say that impulsivity is kind of biological, and probably because of this impulsivity is also strongly related to difficulties in emotion regulation. So this is kind of connected, but also this is related to procrastination. perfectionism can also, if it is not healthy, can lead to procrastination, because if we set the bar too high, we are like kind of our fear of failure is too high. If we say that if I'm not perfect, then it's failure, then we can have tendency to procrastinate. So this is another factor.
Are there any social or environmental factors?
For social factors, there is some research related to atmosphere at workplace. If the atmosphere is bad, then there is higher risk that people will procrastinate. Maybe because they feel down and they have this bad emotions or negative emotions. But also there was studies on students. Then if you take a procrastinating student and put him into the project with people who don't procrastinate, this person will work better than in the group of procrastinators. And if you take a non-procrastinating student and put them, he or she will like perform on similar way, regardless of in what environment he or she is.
Regardless. So this means that if I'm a procrastinator, if I work with non-procrastinators, I will still procrastinate?
No, I said that the non-procrastinators are less sensitive to this environment, and procrastinators are more sensitive to this environment. So if they are in a group of people who procrastinate, nobody will do nothing. But if procrastinator is put in the group of people who perform effective, then this person will probably perform much better than in other conditions. This was studies on students, so like most of studies are on students, so like it is question...
And you said that they are not really humans, so...
no, humans are a different species, like I said. So it is not obvious if we could like generalize this results.
Do you have some kind of personal intuition regarding whether there are some professional environments where we have more procrastinators and where we have less procrastinators?
I don't have intuition, but there is research on it.
Okay.
And people who have a strong tendency to procrastinate go for jobs where they have no chance to procrastinate. So this are usually like simpler jobs, like in food servers and something like this, because then there is like no space to procrastinate, and then they can perform. And then if they would go to job where they have like more freedom, so they would also have freedom to procrastinate, and then they would procrastinate. So yeah.
Do you think that maybe people who procrastinate tend to go for works where they are physically active, because this way they are engaged? So maybe, as you said, in the restaurant business, but also maybe in the hospitals where you have to move all the time, or in other...
I don't know. I wouldn't say so.
No, you don't think so?
No, I think that if you were like, you could also do like paperwork or something, but if you have to be busy all the time, I think
then it's okay.
Yeah.
All right, interesting. And you told me that you think that in fact, that men tend to be more procrastinating than women.
Yeah. So if we measure it with questionnaires, men have higher scores a bit. I think it is not like a huge difference. But in general, also men are more impulsive. And if you measure this personality with this Big Five questionnaire, there is this word, I'm not sure if I can pronounce it in English, consciousness. So it is higher in women.
Or is it conscientiousness? Conscientiousness.
Yes, consciousness. Mm-hmm. Conscientiousness, yes. So in general, men have lower conscientiousness.
Okay, than women.
Yeah.
And do you have an idea why? Do you think it's social? Do you think it's genetic?
I don't know. I would guess it is rather maybe genetical. So it's probably goes hand in hand with impulsivity, I would say. And for from a biological perspective, when you have to hunt this mammoth, it may be sometimes it may be beneficial to be more impulsive. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's we are more impulsive, I would say. But that's just guessing.
Hey, if you're still listening, that means that you enjoyed this podcast. We love sharing with you, speaking with our guests, and we are happy to bring all this information to you for free. However, if you like what we're doing and you wish to support our work so that we may keep developing this project, visit our website, hhpodcast.buzzsprout.com, and click the support button to make a donation. You can also follow us on Instagram or subscribe us on YouTube. And don't forget to show our podcast to a friend or a family member if you like it. All the links are available in the description of this episode. And now, back to our conversation. And if I know about myself that I'm an impulsive person, what should I do?
I don't know.
First, maybe how to realize that I'm an impulsive person. Is it only about decision making process, so I just make impulsive decisions, or is there something more that I should take note of?
Impulsivity is also not a homogeneous phenomenon. Yes. And when we use questionnaires measuring impulsivity, depending on questionnaires, they have 3 subscales or 5 subscales. So there are different aspects of impulsivity. But in relation to procrastination, probably one of the most important things is something called negative urgency, so that we become more urgent or more impulsive under negative emotions. So if we feel bad, then we tend to change our decisions, change our plans, or say something to other people that we can regret later, and so on, under influence of negative emotions. And I would say that this is related to impulsivity, probably mostly from other aspects of impulsivity. For example, sensation seeking, which is also aspect of impulsivity, is not correlated with procrastination at all. Okay. So it is not.
So even if I'm impulsive, it does not necessarily mean that I have a problem with procrastination.
Yes. And probably I believe that even if you are impulsive and if you are kind of behaved in a clever way, then you will develop ways how to deal with your impulsivity. That's.
Do you have an example?
No, because that's because we don't know how procrastination starts. There's no research on kids, for example, and we can measure impulsivity in kids, and we probably could start to observe when procrastination started if people have 10 years or 15 years or something. And it would be a great study to look at young people who are impulsive, and then to see who of them develops procrastination as tendency and who don't, and why.
Okay, but it's a long study to do, right? It would have to be
a longitudinal study, which is very from organizational perspective, it's really hard to do such studies. It's expensive. It takes a long time.
So perhaps for those who don't know, you could explain what is a longitudinal study?
Longitudinal study is something that we measure things along the time. So we have, going back to this example, that would be a nice study. So that we have kids and have do some research on them when they are 7 years old, 10 years old, 15 years old, or something. Or other longitudinal studies could be in my current project, when we have procrastinating students, of course, and we measure different aspects of their functioning before psychotherapy and after psychotherapy. It is 2 or 3 months, but we will also want to go back to them after the next 6 months. So this is along with time we're measuring different stuff.
And it's challenging, right? Because very often people can get discouraged. I don't know, they can just decide to stop participate in the study.
This is one thing. Another thing is that they can, for example, go to other kind of psychotherapy, as in our case, or they can change the medicines if they are taking like antidepressants or whatever. And it is time consuming. Yeah,
it's challenging.
It's challenging. Yeah.
And what are the ways of measuring procrastination? Because you mentioned questionnaires.
Mm-hmm.
What are the advantages and disadvantages of this measure, and what other measures can you propose?
So in most of the studies, we use questionnaires because it is easy
and less expensive, right?
And what?
Less expensive,
yes,
and
yes.
faster.
Yes, it's easy and fast, but it is like some people can say that they are procrastinators because they have like they are studying on two directions in the university, two faculties, let's say, and working, and they are not like doing everything perfectly, and they said, "Oh, I'm a procrastinator because I can't handle everything I would like." So this can be a disadvantage of questionnaires, that there can be a strong bias on how person sees himself or herself. So it is like not very objective, like with all questionnaires, in fact. But they are not so bad. But there are studies with measuring procrastination in other ways. So, for example, on a conference, I've heard about a study where they gave students some kind of application to their smartphones, and like every few hours or at some random moments, there was a notification, and a student was to say if he or she is procrastinating now, if he or she is realizing what they've planned earlier. So it is like more objective way of measuring if people procrastinate or not. So I would say these two ways are like mostly used, because you have numbers, so you can use the numbers, because you can also make an interview with this person, but it is like we don't have interviews for procrastination, in fact.
Okay. And then can you arrange a task which would measure procrastination in a more discrete way, perhaps?
It is not a standard way. There are some studies that were giving people different tasks, and they were measuring what sequence people take of these tasks and when they finish. And there were also manipulations in these tasks. So, for example, that some were like kind of burdens with negative emotion, and people who procrastinated tended to take these tasks as last, and some other people were starting with this tasks. The measures were like in minutes when they started this task or when they finished this task.
Okay, so it's sort of like whether I start with the least pleasant task or with the most pleasant task.
Yes.
I see. Do you think it's effective?
So it was just kind of, maybe not only one. Now I remember one study that used this approach, and it was like to show that like negative emotions or judgment, it was like the manipulation there has impact on people who procrastinate, but it is not a standard way to measure procrastination. So standard way is questionnaire.
And then you also work with fMRI. So is it possible to measure procrastination with fMRI methods?
Not procrastination itself, because we would have to like give some tasks to people in the scanner to do. So we could do something like I said just a minute ago in the scanner, but it would take a long time. So it would not be like, from scientific perspective and effectiveness of research, it would not be good study, I would say. But we can compare different aspects of brain and brain functioning between people who procrastinate and people who don't. And this is kind of studies that are done, and also I've done such studies And there is also a Chinese group who does a lot of this kind of studies.
Okay, because being in a scanner is very restrictive, right?
Yes.
You can do a lot of things. Maybe you can explain for those who don't know.
So
how does a normal fMRI study look like?
So you lay in a tube that is very noisy.
Yeah.
But you can have a visual or auditory stimuli, so you can look at the screen, or you can with a little mirror, or you can have headphones on and you can hear stuff. And also you can have kind of little keyboard or we call it response pads. So you can press buttons while you're laying in the scanner, because it is important that you don't move too much, but you can move your fingers. So that's what we do in most of fMRI studies, that people lay in this scanner and look at some stuff on the screen, and that can be very different stuff depending on the research question. And then they usually press buttons in responses to different stimuli or whatever.
Yes, it's not pleasant, right? I mean, there are also some people who get panic attacks inside.
Yes, because you are in small tube. So if you have if you are a claustrophobic person, then you will probably not survive too long in this scanner, and will take me out of this. But for most of people, it's like it's okay. It's quite interesting. And usually in our studies, people lay in the scanner for around 1 hour, because we want to use every person as long as we can. But after 1 hour of laying, people are bored already and getting stiff and so. But in my study, one person fall asleep, for example. So it's like,
okay, so he wasn't that stressed. I don't know. For me, I heard so many things, like bad things about fMRI, that the first time that I had to, because like it's stressful, and that you can get nauseous, and that you're like you can be claustrophobic when you're inside. And so then when I was supposed to take part, it was just to see something. It wasn't really a real study. It was just to see the measures, do some photos, whatever. So I had to go inside the scanner, and I was so stressed that I was like, what's going on? And I thought to myself that if you're doing a study on emotions, for example, then if someone is stressed by the whole protocol, that it's like a major bias, actually.
Yeah, it may be, but so probably for some people, especially with claustrophobia.
I mean, for me, the second time when I went there, it was already fine. I was already relaxed, and I wasn't stressed at all, because you get used to it. But I think the first time that you enter, there are a lot of cables. You're going inside a tube. You can't see anything. Like then, I don't know. It's like you're in a spaceship. So I think it.
I wouldn't say our subjects usually like take it very well.
Okay. Okay.
So maybe it's what they tell you before. So
maybe I had the same thing with the VR glasses, because also a lot of people say that you can get nauseous and that you don't know what's going on with the VR glasses. So I also was very stressed when I was supposed to do it for the first time, but it's fine. Like if you have it for a long time, I think it's quite heavy and not very comfortable, but otherwise I didn't have that much of an issue with nausea. Do you think that maybe it would be possible to, for example, do a VR inside a scanner? Do you think it's a possibility of an experimental protocol?
Yes.
Do you think it's promising as an approach?
I think it depends on if you need it. Why would you need it? So, as I said, it is very important in the scanner that people don't move, but it can be important that they are like kind of immersed in the environment, visual environment for some kind of studies. For example, if you study, I don't know, spatial memory or whatever, or spatial orientation, then it could be helpful that if people are kind of like inside the world. And they can navigate and so on, of course, with kind of I don't know, other tools that they can use with their fingers only, not moving their heads. But partly it is also doable with a kind of standard approach where you have look at the mirror. So people play games and they feel looking at the mirrors, not mirror, the screens. They can feel that they are in this kind of space. So it could enhance the experience, but I don't think that it is necessary for many studies, but for some it could be.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because this feeling of immersion, I think it's interesting because for sure, if we're in the VR virtual reality environment, then we can feel as we're like in this space. But if we consider, for example, when we read a book, and we can also feel very immersed, right? Being in the story, even though we're physically not there. I think it's something that we have to consider always when we're planning, like whether it's really necessary to use this kind of approach or not, because we can be immersed without the actual 3D space happening around us.
So it depends on the I would say scientific question.
Yeah. And is there something like a neural correlates of procrastination?
Yes.
Yes. What is it?
There is few. So one is related to impulsivity, and it is so-called gray matter volume. So it's like a measure of density of size. It's hard to say what it is, in fact, of gray matter in a place called the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex.
Okay, so where is it? It's on the left front side of the head.
Yes. So in general, dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, left and right, is strongly related to control of our behavior. And this Chinese group that I mentioned before, they've done the anatomical studies. So they had 200 of people, and they correlated procrastination with this gray matter density in different areas of brain. And it occurred that it correlates negatively. So procrastination correlates negatively with gray matter density in the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. And this part of brain also correlates negatively with impulsivity. So the higher the gray matter volume, the lower the impulsivity, and vice versa. So this is like kind of anatomical correlate. And for functional, for example, in my studies, we found that when we had people, there were not students,
okay.
In the scanner, and we gave them tasks with rewards or punishments, and during blocks with punishments, so where they were performing a simple task, but they could be punished if they perform bad. Right, the prefrontal cortex was more active in non-procrastinating people. So this threat of being punished activated the right dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, so they were controlling their behavior a bit more. And in highly procrastinating subjects, there was a small decrease in this part, in the activity of right DLPFC, because we call it DLPFC, dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. So and it is related to emotions of this punishment. And right dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, it is known from other literature. It activates strongly, or it should activate when you have kind of cognitive task when it is combined with emotions. So emotions may make this task usually a bit more difficult.
So for example, reward punishment. This would be the emotion part, and
especially negative emotions. So punishment, or other emotions,
Okay, and can we somehow train our brain either to increase the gray matter volume in the left dorsolateral left prefrontal cortex, or to increase the activity of the right?
It's a good question. I don't know exactly. So there are studies showing that gray matter volume can change after training. But these were studies, for example, where people were learning to juggle, like throwing things and catching. And after such training, in a special parts of motor cortex, there was increase in gray matter volume. So we call it the brains are plastic. So there's neuroplasticity. So brain can change a bit. So this is one thing. So in our study, in the next stage, we will have fMRI before and after therapy. So we will see also if it changes, if activity changes after the therapy. There are studies showing that yes, for depression and anxiety disorders. So we'll see if it's also for procrastination. So I believe that yes, it can change after the training or therapy, and also it can probably change. And for example, for depression, there is this therapy called transcranial magnetic stimulation that you stimulate dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Hello, with the magnetic field. And it helps half of the people with depression. So maybe it could be also helpful for procrastinators.
But is it only, because I heard that it's only for the major depression disorder? Is that true, or does it help everyone who have some kind of depression? Some form
it helps. Like usual with depression, it helps around half of people. So it is, and we don't know why.
Okay, is it mostly given to people who have who are resistant to medication, or is it just an alternative form of therapy that you can use? So
it is not very popular in Poland, but in States it's like one of the first therapies that you get. And if it doesn't help, then probably they start with medication. Okay, but also no, not always, because sometimes also in States they start with medication. So it is like. And you never know what will be effective for depressions. This is also like a challenge for future researchers and psychiatrists to like personalize treatment. So we are not guessing, we are not trying, but we could okay, you have this and this kind of features, let's say, and so for you it will be best to combine medication with psychotherapy, and for you transcranial magnetic stimulation would be okay, or some things. But now because I thought
that the transcranial magnetic stimulation is kind of like the best way of treatment, because I think it's the fastest, and you don't really like if you don't use medication. I think it's always better not to use medication. And then psychotherapy is good, but it's a longer. You need longer time to treat. Do you think it's true? Do you think that TMS seems to be...
I'm not an expert, so I don't want to say. I only know that medication is also not so fast, because usually antidepressive drugs like start working after 6-8 weeks. So it also takes a long time. And after these 2 months, you know if it helps or not. So it is a problem.
Yeah, but it's true that in Poland it's not very common. In general, I think in many places it's still not very known, the TMS approach.
I think it's quite popular in States.
Yeah, but I think in my environment, not many people know about that. Okay, very interesting. So, what do you think? Now we're talking about procrastination for a while, and I would like to know whether you know of any strategies that we can use to counteract the procrastination.
Yes.
Yes, perfect.
Go for psychotherapy.
Okay, I think psychotherapy is important.
So meta-analysis show that psychotherapy, especially in cognitive behavioral framework, is effective to treat procrastination. But we also can try some things by ourselves, and I would say 3 things. One, divide your task into smaller tasks, because if you are to write your PhD thesis, it's like a huge task, and it can paralyze people, because it's like not doable quickly. But if you think that, okay, today I will read an article or write a paragraph on something, this is such task doesn't lead to so many negative emotions because it's like not so huge. So I can write a paragraph or I can read article, but I can't write PhD thesis, like sit and write.
Yeah.
So this is this discomfort or negative emotions of fear of failure or whatever related to whole PhD thesis is huge. And if you divide tasks into smaller tasks, it is like you can diminish this aspect. So this is one thing. Another thing I would say is try to change your thoughts. It may be not so easy, but let's go back to this student who has an exam, and he or she can think that if I don't pass this exam or if I will have a bad grade, then I will not be able to choose the specialization I want to. But if you tell this in another way, you can think that if I pass this exam good, I can choose my specialization that I want. And logically, it's the same.
So sort of adapt the positive way of turning the problem.
Yes, but emotionally or motivationally, there's a big difference, and we can train ourselves in thinking in a kind of more motivating way. So we can try to, when we have a task, we can try to think how we can change our thinking so it would support us and not block us. So this is, in fact, this is part of psychotherapy in procrastination, to change our thinking of the tasks, because so, and we can choose how we think, especially after kind of training, and this can affect, and the way we think affects our emotions and motivation. So this is the second thing. And the third thing, I would say that reward yourself for even small successes. As I said earlier, that if we are rewarding ourselves for procrastinating, then we like reinforce this behavior. So it is, I think, a good idea to reward ourselves for even small successes. So if I write this paragraph of PhD, then like I can give myself like a minute or two to feel this satisfaction. It doesn't mean that I have to like go to a bar to celebrate or buy a new pair of shoes or whatever, but to give ourselves this moment of satisfaction. It is also rewarding, and this can lead to learning of this new kind of functioning.
Yeah, but we have to be careful, because if we make a habit of like rewarding ourselves with chocolates every time we finish a page of our PhD, then by 300 pages we will be.
That's why I'm talking about this feeling of satisfaction.
Yeah.
So this is also rewarding. So to give ourselves a moment of looking back and say, okay, I managed.
And to learn to reward ourselves in a way different than like satisfying maybe because in the end, if we reward ourselves by, for example, buying something or eating something or whatever, then it's not really a reward. I mean, it's a reward, but it's a short-term reward. It's like instant gratification that we're going after, right? So
I think it is also like good to reward ourselves with some bigger rewards for like bigger successes. So if I finish the PhD, I can go to a restaurant or whatever. So to celebrate. So it is also important, I think. But for these small things, it is important to just to give ourselves a moment of satisfaction, and it should also help, I believe.
Yeah. And in terms of psychotherapy, you work with cognitive behavior therapy. Right now you're doing a study on that subject. Do you think other kinds of therapy could also help, or do you think that cognitive behavioral therapy is really the approach that you should
So that we don't have enough studies to be sure, but from the meta-analysis, it seems that CBT, so the cognitive behavioral therapy, is the most effective. But there are also studies showing that ACT, which is I don't remember. Yeah.
ACT therapy. Wait, I will.
Yes. So it is like.
It's acceptance and commitment therapy.
Yes, acceptance and commitment therapy. There's one study comparing this CBT and ACT, and it is showing that they were equally effective for procrastination. But this is just one study, so it is like we need a lot of studies to make meta-analysis to be like to know more. But in general, I think for now, like what was tested, CBT seems to be the best, but it is like if there will be more studies on ACT or maybe other approaches, maybe it will occur that they are also similarly effective or even better.
And can you tell us, because I really would like to do an episode on cognitive behavioral therapy itself, but for now, could you tell me like the main points of cognitive behavioral therapy? What does it consist of? What are the goals of this therapy?
So in general, I would say I'm not a psychotherapist myself, but I would say that there are like 3 elements in CBT. One is psychoeducation, so education on related to the topic of the therapy. So, for example, procrastination or depression or anxiety. So, why people have it? What are the mechanisms that can trigger this, and so on. So people get some knowledge about it. Another is like a cognitive work, and often this is kind of similar to what I've said already, to change our thoughts and this way to change our emotions also. So this is like work on our thoughts, on our beliefs, on our...
So to change the mechanisms by which we function in everyday life, sort of.
Yes.
To change the way we think, to change the scripts that we have, perhaps?
Yes, something like this, yes. So change the way we look at ourselves, at the world, so how we think, and without lying to ourselves, because like...
every day you tell to yourself.
yes, I'm the best. Not this way, but this example that I gave, I think it's kind of descriptive, that we can think about the same thing in a different way, so it can be like more beneficial for us, for our emotions, or for our motivations. So
okay, and could you tell me a bit more about the study that you're working on right now with the cognitive behavioral therapy?
And third part, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Third part of CBT is also, so it's behavioral. So it is like on introducing new behaviors to our life. And depending on the subject, if it's depression, procrastination, anxiety, so people like not only change their thinking, but also change their behaviors. So for procrastination, for example, it can be like to start doing stuff.
Thank you for the piece of advice.
Going back to our study, I can tell a bit. I don't want to go into details because it's still ongoing, and our subjects and our therapists are blinded, so I don't want them to listen to
totally
this.
Understand.
But in fact, we have 4 groups. One group is so-called waiting list, so it is a control group, and we have 3 groups that are active, and they have protocols which are based on cognitive behavioral therapy, but they are partly different and partly similar, and I will not talk about details here.
Okay.
So we want to check if some protocols would be more effective or less effective, and we'll see.
Okay, and when will you finish the protocol?
This part we will finish in spring. Now we are like finishing, the last groups are undergoing the therapies, but we will want to go back to them in half a year and test if the effects are stable. So it will be in the spring, and also in the spring we will start another stage of our study. We will take new students, and before and after we will put them into...
So it's on students, the study?
Yes.
Okay, and why do you always do your studies on students if you think they are different from the rest of the population?
Because most of the studies are on students, so you can like compare between other studies. it is easier because students are more flexible with time usually, so it is just easier to ask them to come to lab in the morning or in the middle of the day. And if you would like to do studies on working people, then probably only afternoons or weekends you could ask them to come to lab and so on. So most of the studies for practical reasons is on students, but also from scientific perspective, it is when we are starting kind of subject, it is good to have homogeneous group of subjects in a study, and because and then you can see if something works or not. And if you would have not homogeneous group, and if it wouldn't work, you don't know why. If it doesn't work at all, or because your group was too diverse and it worked for some people and didn't work for some.
Yeah.
And to have like a statistical power, you would have to look for whom it was effective. Then you would have to have like huge samples, as it would be also expensive and complicated. So usually we do most of studies on like students or homogeneous group, but then it would be very good to go to this with other people.
So do you know whether there are any effects on age? The procrastination, does it differ in the age? So
it seems that it decreases with age a bit, but not greatly. But with age, probably we learn how to deal with ourselves, to procrastinate less, or to be more effective in our work, job, or whatever.
And do you think that's among people who are like among the elderly, so 65 plus, do you think that procrastination might be a problem? Have you ever thought about that?
I haven't, but I can imagine that it can be a problem. For example, if they have kind of health symptoms and they don't go to a doctor, they procrastinate visiting the doctor, it can be a problem.
Yeah, when you're paying the bills, right? It's also something that is important. So it doesn't change with age. You always have to pay the bills.
Yes. So I think it can be. They have more time. So yeah, but in general, it can be a problem.
And how do I know whether I'm just lazy or whether I am a procrastinator? Is there a difference?
How would you define lazy?
I don't feel like doing anything.
Yeah, so go for it.
Yeah, so do you think it's the same thing?
No, I don't really know if laziness exists, but maybe if it does, then I would assume, but maybe it's just my thinking that people who are lazy, they are okay with that, and people who procrastinate suffer with that because they don't want to be lazy. They want to do stuff, but they just don't do, and it leads to suffering. And if someone is lazy, I don't feel like doing this, I don't do this, and I'm okay with this. So that's I would like see the difference here, but I don't really know if there are lazy people.
Okay. And we talked a little bit, we talked about impulsivity, and then we mentioned a bit the notion of self-control, but I wanted to ask you a little bit more about that. So what is the link between self-control? What is self-control? How would you define self-control? And what is the link between self-control and procrastination?
Very good question. So I would start maybe with self-regulation, which is something broader than self-control. So self-regulation, from scientific definitions, it's self-control is that we are doing what we want to do. And self-regulation also includes, for example, emotion regulation, thought regulation. So these techniques that I was talking, that we can change our thoughts, is kind of act of self-regulation, I would say, but not self-control. Self-control is that I'm going to do this and I do this. And so this is how scientists define this. So self-regulation is a broader topic. Self-control is included in self-regulation, and of course it is related to procrastination. So maybe I I know what was your question?
How is it related
How is it related?
to procrastination?
So I would say that difficulties in self-regulation, in fact, are underpinning procrastination, but also addictions. And this is, I think, worth saying that probably many different self-regulation disorders like addictions, procrastination, binge eating probably, and maybe a few others, have many similar mechanisms. And one of them is emotion regulation and avoidance. Whether you are like binge eating or you are using substances or playing games in pathological way, or procrastinating, it is avoidance of kind of discomfort or negative emotions for a short time. And also, as when I was talking about this right dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and negative emotions, identical results were found for addictions. So there is like probably some of mechanisms underlying procrastination and addictions is the same, and this is kind of disorder of self-regulation. But I don't want to say that procrastination is an addiction. Addiction is like a additional mechanism that you like have a drive to go for this special kind of reward, which is substance or behavior that drives you. And in procrastination, one time you can like play games, another time you can watch a series, another time you can paint walls, not to study or whatever. So it is different, but there is few similarities, and I would say that this is like the basis of many self-regulation disorders.
Okay, and is self-control sort of like self-discipline? Would you say that those two are similar? Because self-control is like, if I want to do something, then I engage in this activity. So do you think it's related to the trait of discipline?
Probably, maybe, I don't know. And how would you define discipline? I don't know if there's a scientific.
I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know a scientific definition.
And non-scientific?
I can engage in the activities that I should engage in, even if I don't want to.
So this would be some self-control, I think.
Okay, so I think it's sort of the same thing then. And do you have an idea why some of us have a higher or lower sense of self-control?
I would say impulsivity again. So
okay.
I think,
so it all comes down to impulsivity.
For me now, because we don't know, in fact, but like impulsivity is like a kind of most biological trait that we can measure, because we can measure consciousness, or we can measure emotion regulation, and so on. And this is all related. But impulsivity, I believe, is like, and as these studies on twins show, that it has some kind of genetical background, at least partly. So I would say impulsivity is the root.
Okay. All right. I wanted to ask you. I had a question I forgot. Never mind. Okay. The next thing I wanted to talk to you is regarding the other mental disorders. So we talked a little bit about depression already, and that it might be related somehow to the procrastination. So perhaps if I procrastinate, I might be depressive, if I understand correctly. And then you told me that there are also other disorders that can accompany procrastination, such as ADHD or anxiety disorders.
So I'll start from the back. So for anxiety, I'm not sure. The research is not consistent here. There are studies showing that procrastination is correlated with general anxiety, and there are studies that don't. So For general anxiety, I would not be so sure, but something called fear of failure is always correlated with procrastination. So it is kind of fear or anxiety related to our performance. So this is, but it doesn't have to be correlated with anxiety in general. So for ADHD, yes, it seems that many people with ADHD, their life problem is procrastination, but there probably the mechanism can be different, as I was talking earlier, that it is like emotions and avoidance and so on. It may be also exists also in people with ADHD, but if people have difficulties with keeping attention, then they can have difficulties with finishing tasks. And then if we gave them a questionnaire for procrastination, they will have high scores. So it is like, you're a procrastinator, but it can be just like a symptom of ADHD that we are measuring. And going back to depression, I think it is important to say that it can be related probably in both ways. Some researchers say that procrastination can lead to depression because it is lowering your mood, lowering your self-esteem, and in long term can lead to depression. But also, if you have depression because of other factors, you have no motivation, you have no energy, and if I give you a questionnaire of procrastination, you will have probably high score of procrastination. So I think it is important to be kind of sensitive, and especially if someone didn't have problem with procrastination and it started, it may be a symptom of something more serious like depression. So this is and also going back to this co-occurring disorders, addictions, also people with addictions have higher score in procrastinations, and even our students from previous studies where we had students with high and low level of procrastination, those with higher level of procrastination also had higher scores on alcohol consumption. Okay. So it's like probably related in general to this self-regulation or self-control.
I remember the question I wanted to ask you. It was about emotional regulation, because it's very often used in scientific articles, especially in your topic, but also in other areas. And I sort of have a problem with understanding correctly this this notion of emotional regulation, because I'm not sure whether it means that I should distance myself from my emotions and be able to disengage from the current thing that I'm feeling, or whether it's I don't know, whether it's something else. Maybe not to be overwhelmed by my emotions. How would you define this concept?
So there is, I'm not an expert, in fact, in emotion regulation, but there is like many different ways of emotion regulation, and one of them is procrastination, for example. So if you feel bad because of your task, you can like switch Netflix on, and it's emotion regulation. But in the long term, it is not healthy, I would say. Or not.
Okay, so emotion regulation can be bad or can be good. So you can have a good way of emotion regulation or a bad way.
Scientists call it adaptive and maladaptive ways of emotion regulation. So if you... Probably it is quite complex, and in some situation, distancing may be good, but the best way, they say, is to like be aware of our regulation, but also to find a way to think at the situation from different perspectives. So it's like kind of similar to what we were talking about, changing our thoughts. So you also can change your emotion, but by looking differently at the situation. So for example, for depression, I know that there were some studies that there were cartoons, and people were to judge if this cartoon is like positive or negative, and people with depression, and they were kind of neutral, and people with depression tended to say that they were negative. So for example, that this person is sad, or those persons other are gossiping on this one, and so on. So they had kind of automatic way of negative view on reality or cartoons or something. And by training, you can change it. And so you can try to think, how can I think of this situation in a more positive way? And it's called cognitive reappraisal. So you use your cognition to reappraise the situation to more positive. Experts in emotion regulation research say that this is adaptive way because it's like kind of healthy, and it is So this is what is also trained during therapy, that you try to look at situations in a more positive way, because situation can be more positive or can be more complex, and you can tend to focus only on negative things. So this is
okay. So it is about a little bit about taking distance from my emotional state and reevaluating the situation. It's how you would define it, more or less.
Yes.
Okay.
So you have to be kind of aware of these emotions, and then you can choose what to do next.
So to be able to have this kind of meta understanding of your processes, emotional processes.
Yes, but also, for example, mindfulness, which is recently quite popular, is kind of also a way of emotion regulations, that you try to accept your emotions. So, okay, now I'm kind of, for example, scared, and I'm trying to accept this. So I'm frustrated, and it also seems to help people. So it is like you don't change it, but you accept it, and you don't try to fight it or negate it, and it is also helpful if you train it.
We were talking about the ADHD case, or in general other cases also. In fact, it's that in general in procrastination we tend to engage in something right now rather than going for the long-term goal. Do you think that being able to effectively visualize now the goal that I want to achieve in the future may be one of the strategies to overcome the procrastination? So if I arrive to convince myself right now that my goal in the future is pertinent and is very salient to me, then I can overcome my procrastination in the given moment. Or do you think it's just, you don't know?
I don't know. There was a research on visualization, I think. Probably it wasn't related to procrastination itself, but to achieving goals. And if people were visualizing the goals, the finish, they tended to not to engage in actions. But if they were visualizing their actions leading to these goals, then it was easier for them to really engage in these actions. So I would say if you want to go for this kind of visualization, it would be better to visualize yourself as you sit and learn to the exam, and not just like that you have like good grade in from this exam already.
Okay.
But I'm
Maybe
not an
it's not
expert here, so probably there's much more research on it.
Okay. One of the last questions that I wanted to ask you is regarding your future research. So what are your perspectives for the future? Are there any research questions that you would really like to answer? Are they related to procrastination or maybe some other subjects? Maybe there is a question that you would like to answer but it's impossible to answer right now?
I have few kind of ideas, but currently my idea is to make application that would allow people to have therapy of procrastination in their phone. There are studies showing for few different disorders that automated psychotherapy can be effective, because what is important that clients or patients do stuff, not therapists. And if problems are kind of well defined and not very complicated, probably we don't need very like skilled therapists and experienced to help people. And now there's like a kind of crisis with mental health worldwide, and I think that like 70% of people in need don't get any help because it's not accessible and not or too expensive. And for mild depression, for some of anxiety disorders, and for procrastination, therapy could be automated. So this is my idea to develop such application, starting with procrastination, but then going to other disorders. So this is the plan for future, and now I'm searching for money to develop it.
Is it challenging to find the funding?
I've just started like last 2 months, so it will take time for sure, because we can get some grants, which would take times, or we can look for investors, would also take time. So I believe that in half a year we will start developing it.
And do you think it's possible to replace the therapist with a robot?
For some disorders, yes. For some, I believe not. So.
Okay. And do you think that when someone... don't you think that the social aspect is important, even in case in mild depression or in
so research
procrastination?
shows that it is effective, similarly or almost the same. And I think there was a study, I think it was kind of anxiety disorder, I don't remember from now, that there were people who had psychotherapy with therapists, and there were people who had psychotherapy which was automated. And the results after the therapy were the same, but after 6 or 9 months later, it occurred that those people who had automated psychotherapy improved better. Okay. Because probably they were like less dependent on other person, so they've learned better. So I think it may depend. For some problems, for sure, like you have problems with relations or something, probably a robot or application will not be efficient way. For addictions, there were some trials and with automated therapy, and it was not really effective. So it may be an addition to a normal therapy and group therapy, because it's for addiction. I think it is, for many people, it is important to have a group of support, and they have these meetings and so on. So I believe it can be effective for some disorder, but probably not for all. Well, I'm almost sure not for all. But for those that it can be effective, I think we should do it, because it can help many people in a cheap way and be accessible for some people who live in smaller cities or have less money. Psychotherapy is not available for them, and many of them need it. So.
Yeah, it can also be very personalized, and even when today you're talking to a ChatGPT or something, a tool that's similar to it, you actually, I mean, I'm pretty... I don't know, when I talk to it, I say, for example, thank you for your help. Then I catch myself doing it, and I'm like, okay, I think then it might work as a personal assistant or a personal therapist, and it has a potential, definitely. So yeah, I would agree. Okay, and lastly, do you think that forming a habit in a domain which is not related to procrastination itself, so having a good habit of, for example, healthy eating or having a good sleep hygiene and so on, can it help us overcoming the procrastination?
I have no idea.
And what's your personal intuition? Do you think it may help, or?
I really don't know if it is kind of that building this habit, if its strength makes your self-control stronger, then it could generalize also to other areas of your life, probably.
So perhaps you could this way build a sort of sense of empowerment, and see that you do something and it brings some benefits. So then in other aspects you could also have the same
yes, but also it could be that like you use all your power to build one habit, and then you are like too exhausted to perform in other areas. I don't know. Yeah, you really don't know.
Okay. Perfect. So thank you very much for the talk. I had a chance to learn a lot of interesting things. So I wish you all the best in your future projects.
Thank you, and to you too.
Yeah, and I don't know, perhaps see you in the future.
Probably.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Are you ready to hear the challenge from Dr. Marek Wypych? As an expert on procrastination, Dr. Wypych has his own strategies on how to combat the chronic postponement of tasks. He invites you to try and overcome your tendency to procrastinate. The challenge is: first, try to identify the moments of procrastination. Try to capture those moments where you postpone what you should do. Maybe you keep avoiding answering a bunch of emails. Maybe you're struggling to start writing an essay or start a difficult task at work. Or maybe you constantly delay making that doctor's appointment. Try to identify when this happens and change your thoughts in relation to this topic. Instead of feeling scared, what happens if you don't complete a task, think more positively about what could happen if you do complete it, and if you do it well and on time. So when you catch yourself making a decision to watch your favorite series instead of starting working on a project you should be doing, try to change the negative thought, for example, I will not be good enough, or this task is so boring, into, well, if I am good enough, I will feel good about myself. My colleagues will think I am good at my job, I will have time for other activities later, and I won't have to worry anymore about the fact that I still didn't complete this task. Go ahead and try for yourself. Good luck!